The Under-Secretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, or USD, is a high-ranking civilian position in the Office of the Secretary of Defense within the United States Department of Defense, responsible for advising the Secretary and Deputy Secretary of Defense on recruitment, career development, pay and benefits, and oversight of the state of military readiness. The Undersecretary is appointed from civilian life by the President and confirmed by the Senate to serve at the pleasure of the President. The current acting Undersecretary is Peter Levine. Overview. The Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness is the principal staff element for the Department of Defense for all human resources, human capital development, and personnel logistics matters. The USD has oversight of the Defense Commissary Agency, Department of Defense Education Activity, Defense Human Resources Activity, the Military Health System, and the Defense Travel Management Office. The USD is also responsible for training, health affairs, National Guard and Reserve affairs, personnel requirements for weapons support, and military and civilian family matters, subject to the authority of the Secretary of Defense, through the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military Personnel Policy. The United States Military Entrance Processing Command also reports to the Undersecretary. With the rank of Undersecretary, the USD is a Level 3 position within the executive schedule. Since January 2010, the annual rate of pay for Level 3 is $165,300. History. The position was first mandated by the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 1994, signed by President Clinton on November 30, 1993. Defense Directive 5124.2, passed the 17th of March 1994, officially established the position, incorporating the functions of the Assistant Secretary of Defense and authorizing authority over the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs and the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. Since the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2000 was signed on October 5, 1999, the Undersecretary has been responsible for establishing standards on deployment of units away from assigned duty stations, the length of time they may be away for deployment away from assigned duty stations, and for establishing systems for reporting tracking deployments. When created in 1993, the USD assumed authority primarily over three offices: the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs, and Assistant Secretary of Defense for Force Management Policy. The ASD has since been abolished, its responsibilities assumed by other officials reporting to the USD. Reporting officials. Officials reporting to the USD include Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, Military Deputy to the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness Director, Office of Diversity Management and Equal Opportunity Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute Director, Defense Suicide Prevention Office Director, Personnel Risk Reduction Office, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs Military Health System, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Wounded Warrior Care and AMP Transition Policy, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness and Force Management Director, Defense Commissary Agency Director, Department of Defense Education Activity Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Civilian Personnel Policy, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military Personnel Policy, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military Community and Family Policy, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness Director, Office of Total Force Planning and AMP Requirements Director, Transition to Veterans Program Office Director, Defense Human Resources Activity. Director, DoD, VA Collaboration Office. Budget. Budget totals. The annual budget for the USD is contained in the Office of the Secretary of Defense's budget, under the Defense-wide Operation and Maintenance account. Budget features contracts and other support services, funds contracts and other support services for mission requirements, including Intergovernmental Personnel Act requirements, Advancing Diversity and Equal Opportunity Program, funding to increase the number of people with targeted disabilities in the federal civilian workforce to support the DoD goal of 2% DoD-wide, emphasizing the benefit for wounded service members. Assistant Secretary of Defense (ASD) is the principal medical staff advisor to the Secretary of Defense and principal program manager for all DoD health matters, to include medical readiness, health care delivery, preventive medicine, medical military construction, and the procurement, development, training and retention of medical, military and civilian personnel. Assistant Secretary of Defense funds managed by ASD are utilized to conduct valuable research and analysis for specific topics and issues that arise related to the National Guard and Military Reserve components. Combatant commanders exercise engagement and training transformation. The program was established as a result of direction from the Quadrennial Defense Review that realigned and consolidated joint training programs and applies resulting efficiencies against new mission areas and existing joint training shortfalls. Defense Safety Oversight Council supports safety initiatives to reduce and prevent injuries to Defense Department personnel. Defense Readiness Reporting System allows for quick analysis of force capability issues, effective program oversight, operator training, and data maintenance. Lost Workdays System. Lost Workdays aims to increase operational readiness by providing data and analysis to eliminate preventable mishaps. Military Personnel Policy Naturalization Support, funding to pay U.S. citizenship and immigration services in the United States Department of Homeland Security to not charge fees to military members applying for naturalization to become U.S. citizens. Military Spouse Intern Program assists eligible spouses of active duty military in obtaining positions in federal agencies by paying the spouse's salary and benefits for the first year of employment. Studies Program. The department contracts for assistance in facilitating studies that improve the overall operation and efficiency of the OUSD and the programs over which it exercises oversight. Training Transformation provides oversight of the department's joint training effort. Wounded Warrior Care and Transition Policy funds WWCTP operations that provide OSD-level oversight of the development and implementation of comprehensive disability, non-medical care and case management and transition programs, policies and standards department-wide. Travel funds employee travel to support USD mission office holders. Principal Deputy. The Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness is the Undersecretary's Chief Staff Assistant. PDUSD is delegated full power and authority to act for the USD and exercise the powers of the USD on any and all matters that the USD is authorized to act, except in those areas where delegation of the USD authority is otherwise restricted by higher authority or prohibited by law. Established as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense by the National Defense Authorization Act 4 FY 2002, the post took over the duties of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Force Management Policy, which was then abolished. The DUSD was redesignated Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, or PDUSD, in July 2003 by DoD Directive 5124.8. As of 2012, the position again holds the rank of Principal Deputy Undersecretary.